All right, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to session 5 of Product University. I cannot believe we're already at session 5. And also, happy February. I hope you all had a fantastic start to 2025. Or if you were like me and you were sick all of January, I hope you now are feeling better. But, anyways, we have a fantastic class in store, so to speak. And one thing I do want to mention before we begin, and it's something I've been repeating the last couple of sessions, is typically we see a pretty big drop off in registrations around this time because Zoom is so finicky with revealing the last 4 dates of Product University. So if you know someone in your team that had difficulty or didn't receive a link for this Zoom, or even if you personally are using someone else's Zoom link to attend, please feel free to email Rachel@RIMAN. We'll get you that registration link, or we'll make sure that you get credit for attendance if you did use someone else's link. But without further ado, we're going to get started. We have a short but sweet and very in-depth discussion today, which I, of course, always love. Alrighty, so today's topic, of course, is hair physiology and RIMAN. And so with this topic, we're really looking again in depth at the molecular makeup of your hair follicle, your hair shaft, what's going on in both regards. And it's similar to the approach we took with session 3 when we looked at skin physiology, really understanding the makeup and the minute details of the human body can help us make educated decisions about products. And of course, the products we are, of course, choosing are the Bodolab hair care products. But again, with that in mind as well, I also want to reiterate that you do not need to commit all of this to memory. We'll have a recap at the end of this call. We'll also, of course, have the worksheet, but it's just useful to know. And I know many of you out there are wanting that extra information, which I love. So without further ado, we'll look at your hair at a glance. All right, so your hair at a glance. Humans have approximately 5 million hair follicles. Hair is essentially a flexible, thin keratin thread with great strength and elasticity. And so keratin, if you'll remember, keratin actually makes up our skin cells as well. So it's basically protein. Your hair is protein. And although that we really look towards hair for your cosmetic and aesthetic appearance and also to express your personality, it does have additional benefits for your body, especially depending on its location. It offers protection against external elements. It allows for thermal regulation to hot or cold, even UV protection. It also helps you sense certain touch. You know, when you have someone lightly brush your hair and it begins to stand up, all of that good stuff. So yes, we are looking at hair in an aesthetic realm, but it does so much for our body as well. And so when we do come to appreciate hair, if the hair growth and follicular structure are unbalanced, there can actually be a significant impact on perceived hair health. And so we'll go more in depth into the common types of hair problems that we perceive within the personal care industry and how many different ingredients address those problems. And so with that in mind, understanding that your hair, yes, is on top of your head, but of course you have it on really the entire part of your body except for the vermilion zone of your lips, your palms, and the soles of your feet, really is helpful in understanding how important the follicle health is from head to toe. And so when we finally come to appreciate the hair follicle, which is what's growing our hair, what's, the internal and alive part of our hair, there are many different mechanics going on here. And so, as you can see, I've noted here that the hair follicle is located within the dermis, and it's considered the living part of your hair. So, if you'll remember from session 3, here's our beautiful depiction of the 3 layers of the skin. We have that epidermis at the top, we have the dermis in the middle, and that fatty cell layer or the hypodermis below. And so the hair follicle specifically extends from the dermis out to the epidermis. And what's important to note is that the epidermis, actually kind of tucks in around the hair follicle. And so this allows essentially for the creation of an opening, of a pore, so to speak, through which that hair grows. And so hair follicles are actually part of what's known as the pilosebaceous unit. Pilo meaning hair, pili, if you think about it, sebaceous, sebum, that's going to be the pores, the oils, and whatnot. And so in that pilosebaceous unit, of course, we have muscles, we have various glands which coat the hair in sebum. We also have that opening for the hair follicle for it to grow out of. And so all of that together works in unity to produce a healthy growth of hair. With that in mind, when we really look at the specific growth of the hair, we start at the hair bulb, this image you can see below here. And so this hair bulb is the region that is actually actively producing hair. And it actually receives a cluster of blood vessels from the dermis, which pushes into that bulb to form the hair papilla. And so the hair or the dermal papilla is right here, and that's where you're getting all those nerve endings and the blood vessels. Those blood vessels are bringing nutrients, they're bringing oxygen to that growing hair, allowing it to grow successfully. And so what's important, of course, here is that at the dermal papilla is there's an active amount of cell differentiation. So when we talked in session 3 about the skin cell cycle, where you start out with healthy keratinocytes and they eventually desquamate or fall off your skin, this is something similar here, in which we actually begin with keratinocytes, with skin cells at this dermal papilla. They pack together to create the matrix of the hair, and that hair begins to grow until it eventually extends outside of the skin. And so when oftentimes we're looking at successful hair growth, or we're looking towards really nurturing the hair follicle, many things will specifically address this region or any unit of the pilosebaceous unit. So whether that's decreasing oil concentration of the sebaceous gland, which is the oil that is produced to lubricate the hair follicle, or even if we're looking at something that helps maintain the healthy growth of the hair follicle itself, really forming the various different layers of that hair shaft before it is produced outside of the skin. And so with this in mind, of course, there are many different details within this depiction, but it's just really important to note that in general, this is what we're looking at as the living part of your hair. As soon as it extends beyond your epidermis, it's dead. And so oftentimes when we are doing various conditioning products or cleansing products, it may be mainly surface active, and that's totally okay because that helps beautify the hair shaft. But just know that we're really treating something that is alive in this instance and something that is dead when it's out of the skin. And so when we look at hair, once it has surpassed that epidermal level and it is beginning to protrude from the hair, whether it's hair on your scalp, hair on your body, whatever it may be, we're really talking about the hair shaft. So this is the visible part of your hair. It's essentially made out of cells that are no longer alive, but specifically it has 3 separate layers, as you can see here. So the interior layer is the medulla. And so it's not well understood what the medulla does for the human hair. There are certain instances in which people are lacking the medulla entirely. More often than not, scientists just kind of term it as the bone of the hair, so to speak. So it's just the center of your hair, but there's not a lot of function to it. What's really important is your cortex. So that's that surrounding area of the medulla. And so the cortex is actually translucent, which allows light to penetrate through. And as the light penetrates through that cortex, it hits the various pigments in your hair. And that is what is producing your hair color. So melanin pigments are going to be all the way in this cortex, as well as a variety of extremely important bonds that help give your hair strength and elasticity. So in the cortex, we have hydrogen bonds, we have disulfide bonds, and even weaker bonds than that. But we also have trace amounts of a variety of elements: aluminum, magnesium, zinc. So it's a very unique structure, so to speak, in that there is so much going on within the cortex. And so when you go, for example, to bleach your hair or dye your hair, it's going to be mainly addressing the cortex, either depositing pigment or breaking disulfide bonds to remove pigment. And so that's really what you're looking towards in terms of chemical changes of the hair. Even more importantly, I guess, or equally as important, is the cuticle. And so the cuticle is the surrounding area of the cortex. It is the outermost part of the hair shaft. And it's made up of tightly packed scales or keratins, so to speak, that are essentially overlapping in a shingle-like structure. And so this mainly protects the hair. Also, it adds some hydrophobicity to the hair, allowing essentially for water to easily be removed from the hair. But it also, in some instances, can allow the hair to appear unhealthy. And so here's why. As you can see on the left-hand side, we have those nicely tightly packed cuticles. They are not only inhibiting sun or UV damage from occurring, they're inhibiting pollution from adhering to the hair and inhibiting water from entering the cortex. When you have damaged cuticles, so say for example, you overtreat your hair or you often heat treat your hair, you may, for example, essentially break the cuticles. They might come off entirely or they might peel off into these kind of flap-like appearances as you see here, in which instantly the UV pollution can go in. You also have the general pollution can enter the cortex and that water as well. Not only does this make your hair physically look like it is frizzy, but it also can cause even further damage to your cortex and a loss of strength of the hair shaft. So many times when we are looking to condition the hair, even if perhaps it's not a system that addresses the hair follicle, it's still important to address this dead, so to speak, part of the hair, because really a lot of the aesthetic concerns that come with hair and are involved with not only maintaining certain bonds within the cortex, but also maintaining a nice smoothness to the layering of the cuticles. And so when we finally look to the growth of the hair, there are actually 4 separate stages in which your hair can be in. And so it's going to be anagen, catagen, telogen, and then a return to anagen. And so I guess there's 3 phases, so to speak, but anagen is the active growth cell production. So the hair on our head can spend roughly 2 to 6 years in the anagen phase, in which a new a new bulb is forming, a new hair shaft and hair follicle is growing. However, for the hair on your arms, your legs, your eyelashes, they have a much shorter anagen phase. That's why they don't grow that long. Before they get to a certain point, they eventually die off and a new hair grows in its place. But the hair on your head, it's in it for a while, and that's why we were able to grow our head hair so long. But when we enter the catagen phase, this is when the growth of that hair follicle stops and it begins to detach from the bulb to eventually make its way out of the skin entirely. And so that's really going to not only have, some certain perceived moments of hair loss if you accidentally pull it out of that catagen phase, but in general, this is your body trying to shed that hair as it is done growing. And so with that, the catagen phase is really a transitional stage. So as you can see, it really lasts for maybe a few weeks, and roughly 2% of your scalp hairs are in this phase at any given time. With then the transfer to the telogen phase, this is the complete detachment and the full preparation for the next approach of anagen, for the next growth of a hair follicle. And so the telogen phase is really thought to be the resting phase. That old hair is kind of just chilling out in the hair follicle. It'll either come out naturally or it'll be pushed completely out of that hair follicle by the next hair growth. And so with that in mind, oftentimes in specific instances in which there are hair loss diseases, for example, alopecia, they often look at these various hair growth cycles and see if there's a deficiency with the hair in regards to a specific cycle. Is it not spending enough time in the anagen phase? Is it falling out too quickly? Whatever it may be. But with that in mind, we roughly lose upwards of 100 different hairs a day on the top of our head. That's roughly pretty normal. So even in some instances, upwards of 200 follicles a day can be lost for certain individuals. So if you ever experience hair loss and you're like, this seems like a lot, it's actually 100 to 200 different follicles a day could be falling out. And so we do then, of course, appreciate systems like the Bodolab hair care products, which allow for maintenance of hair density, allowing for that fullness to still be perceived even when your hair is naturally falling out, as it should. It is supposed to naturally shed 100 to 200 follicles a day. And so with that all in mind, this creates a variety of different perceivable hair types we can see. And there are so many different ways to classify your hair. You can classify it by curl pattern, density, the color, the health of your hair, the tendencies of your hair in terms of oiliness or dryness. For example, if you look towards hair density, of course, you have thick, medium, or fine. Thick being the most robust, it literally feels thicker than the most fine hair. You also have hair color, which is determined by the content of melanin within the cortex. And there's 2 specific subcategories of melanin that create hair pigment. There's eumelanin and pheomelanin. So for someone like myself who is a redhead, I have a lot of pheomelanin going on in my cortex, which reflects as red hair when the sunlight hits that cortex. Others with darker hair or with more unique hair, perhaps you have a couple of different strands of colors, you'll have eumelanin, which is kind of creating that dark brown or black pigment. in terms specifically of hair types versus, or via, excuse me, curl pattern, where there's 4 different types. So we have, of course, straight, wavy, curly, and coily. This is probably my most enjoyable hair type that I like to look at because the hair is literally growing differently in each of these types. With straight hair, it grows directly straight out of the hair follicle, so it creates that straight hair illusion. Versus wavy hair and curvy hair or curly hair begin to actually grow at a slant in the hair follicle, and that creates the kinks in the hair that produces a visible curl once that hair has reached the epidermis. And so something as simple as your hair follicle being at a different angle can entirely create a different hair type for yourself versus your friends or family. Furthermore, when scientists look at the cross sections of those different hair types, you can see that it's different in regards to the hair shaft circumference. With straight hair, it's a perfect circle. You get all the way to curvy hair where it's much more elliptical. And so scientists will use a variety of different characteristics, so to speak, to classify hair types. And then personal care formulators will also utilize those to decide which target audience they may have for a new product. With that all in mind, it is important to know your hair type because there are certain hair types that have certain characteristics that must be treated specially in their hair care routine. For example, if you have curly or coilier hair, it's much more porous, meaning it more easily absorbs water. And so oftentimes that water is going to stay in, creating frizz. So understanding, for example, that your hair is more porous can help you choose which conditioning and cleansing products you want to go forward with. All right, and so last but not least, in understanding the physiology of the hair is looking at the scalp itself. So I often like to talk about the microbiome, you all know it, but the scalp too has microbiome, much like your facial skin, much like the skin on your body. And I really like to look at your scalp as an extension of your facial skin. Still has those same typical layers as we clearly saw in the hair follicle depiction, but also needs the same kind of TLC within your hair care routine. And so there was a recent trend a few years back, or these essentially called the skinification of the scalp. And so this is really treating your scalp with specialized products, looking towards exfoliating, hydrating, and moisturizing to keep the health of your hair at the root. Your scalp is crucial in understanding that it is the root of your hair. It is where healthy hair is growing from. So yes, we can use conditioning products or dyes to beautify the dead parts of our hair, but your scalp really needs that TLC to help produce otherwise healthy hair. And so on that scalp with the 3 layers of skin, we of course have that 4th layer, that microbiome. This is going to help or hinder your hair health. For example, when I say hinder, for example, one of the most common bacterial species that proliferate on the scalp is Malassezia furfur or Malassezia furfur. So M. furfur is actually a specific genus of fungi, and it can cause dandruff and scaly patches in overgrowth. So understanding that you also need to treat your scalp microbiome to perhaps reduce the chances of aesthetic concerns is crucial in approaching your hair care products as well. But all of that in mind, we'll now kind of conceptualize the variety of common hair concerns. So of course, it's very similar to concerns with your facial skin. We have dry hair, oily hair, perhaps an overproduction of dandruff, or even just damaged cuticles to your hair, producing aesthetically displeasing hair, so to speak. So with dry hair, your hair follicles aren't producing the necessary amount of sebum to sufficiently coat the hair follicle and the scalp. In dandruff, we have a microbiome imbalance or intense dryness. So the perception of dryness or of dandruff can be very similar. You might even perceive flaking with dry hair. But in both instances, not only is it a matter of balancing your microbiome, it's also about ensuring proper moisturization of your scalp. On the opposite end, we have oiliness. This is when your hair follicle is producing too much sebum. It could be due to hormonal regulation or even overwashing. And in this instance, as you keep overwashing, your hair is overcompensating by producing more oil. It's the same story that goes for your facial skin as well, where you keep overwashing your skin, so it's producing more oil to keep up. So That's always difficult to determine in regards to, am I cleansing enough, or is my hair naturally oily? Am I cleansing too much, causing this oiliness? So sometimes playing around with your routine or giving your hair a moment to adjust, so to speak, in your routine can help you ultimately determine if you perhaps truly have oily hair or if you are forcing it based on your current system. Lastly, that cuticle damage. Your hair shaft can be missing cuticles, they're not properly aligned. This creates a decrease in hydrophobicity, so an increase in water loving of the hair. It's going to attract water, it's going to look frizzier, it's going to also weaken the strands, and oftentimes this can also appear as breakage. And so when we looked at the depiction of the hair shaft, I had mentioned that within the cortex there are various types of bonds, but two very specific bonds: disulfide bonds and hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds can easily be broken with the introduction of water. So for example, when you step out of the shower, your hair might look a little straight, and then as it dries, it becomes to get curly again. They can easily reform. Furthermore, hydrogen bonds can easily be broken with heat treatment. You straighten your hair, it's straight for that time. As soon as you wash your hair, it returns back to your natural hair state. When you're doing something more chemically, you're dyeing your hair, you're bleaching your hair, that's when you're breaking the disulfide bonds, and those are much more difficult to reform. That's why you really often need either keratin treatments or either some kind of polymer to bring back that strength of the hair if you went too far with your chemical treatments. But all of that's just really important in understanding where your cuticle damage might be coming from. If you're someone that has never dyed their hair, then perhaps you just are heat treating it too much, or you're brushing it when it's way too wet, whatever it may be, it can be causing cuticle damage. But we have a solution for cuticle damage, dandruff, dryness, oiliness, whatever it may be. And of course, that is our Deserticola hair care system. So the story of Deserticola is beautiful. It is naturally or natively a microalgae that were derived from desert biomes. And when scientists took this microalgae and began to derive various extracts to understand how it was surviving in such arid conditions, they found a specific metabolite called loliolide. And so as you see here, I actually attached a research paper finding that loliolide, this metabolite, actually can regulate hair follicle inductivity by essentially creating a beneficial platform for hair growth. Essentially, in simpler terms, this loliolide helps create a healthy hair follicle, which in turn creates healthy hair growth. So once this was discovered in 2019, we began to collaborate with Dr. Hee-sik Kim of the Korean Research Institute of Bioscience and Biotechnology to see how we could harness this for an exclusive ingredient for RIMAN's use. And of course, that was the creation of Deserticola. So Deserticola has a concentrated form of this loliolide. It is 12 times more concentrated than natural sources alone. And so this loliolide is not only going in and helping with that healthy hair growth, but it also has antioxidant and anti-apoptotic properties. So anti-apoptotic is essentially anti-cell death. So it actually helps your cells stay alive and continue to differentiate and continue to grow your hair follicle. With Deserticola, that's of course an amazing ingredient on its own, but we never stop with just one ingredient. So in all three products, we also have nettle extract. This nettle extract is sourced by Ask Base, so that's that RIMAN company on Jeju Island, and it is of course a Jeju-based natural ingredient. So this nettle extract has various vitamins, minerals, amino acids. It's rich in it's rich in vitamins A, C, and K, and various other nutrients, so to speak, that really reinforce not only the strength of your hair cuticles, but your hair follicle. If you remember, I mentioned there are many trace elements within the cortex of your hair, and sometimes these need to be replenished to keep the strength of your hair. The nettle extract is also a powerful anti-inflammatory agent, especially for your scalp. So if you have any skin dermatoses that perhaps create extremely dry or inflamed scalp, the nettle extract might help soothe that as well. Lastly, in the products as well, we also, of course, have that camellia seed oil. I hope you are not a stranger to camellia seed oil. We have it in a variety of different products, even in the Insulderm skincare products, but it is so beautiful for hair care. And again, it is another natural extract that we have sourced ourselves on Jeju Island. So the camellia seed, or excuse me, the camellia seed extract is native to Asia, cultivated by Ask Base, but specifically it is rich in palmitic and omega-6 linoleic fatty acids. These fatty acids are crucial for the moisturization of that dead part of hair, of that hair follicle, or excuse me, of the hair shaft, but it's also crucial in the moisturization of your scalp as well. It also further has anti-inflammatory benefits and can even improve the elasticity and density of the hair strands. So these three ingredients, amongst a variety of other novel ingredients, really work together to not only address the aesthetic portions of our hair, of that hair shaft, but to also reinforce the strength and the health of your scalp and of your hair follicle as well. And so, as you may also know, we are proud to boast that the Bodolab products in their entirety, both the Zerticola and the Swamma Body Care, are all Eve vegan. And so there are many fantastic vegan or vegetarian certifications worldwide, but Eve Vegan is a powerful one, so to speak. So Eve stands for Expertise Vegan Europe. It's an independent organization that actually assesses a variety of different categories of personal care products and even of foodstuffs or raw materials. And so they consistently are making sure that not only are you producing a vegan product, thusly getting the seal, but it only exists for a limited time on a product. So you must reintroduce your product to Eve to keep your seal, which is of course what we have done. So Eve is also monitoring the variety of different regulatory concerns surrounding so many different ingredients in the personal care industry, and they adjust their certifications each time new pieces of research come out. And so just know that each time there was an update, RIMAN still has complied and has still been vegan in each instance. Of course, my light just turned off. So our status as e-vegan really means that each product in the entirety of the Bodolab lines is reinforcing not only the health of your hair and your skin, but we also ultimately are backing our third product value of being sustainably sourced. And so this is something we'll never stay stagnant on, I always say. So we'll look for even more ways in which we can comply and be responsible as a brand. But our Eve vegan status is something that we are quite proud of for the Bodolab products. But that all in mind, let's actually look at them. Let's look at the Bodolab products and what's going on. And so, of course, your routine starts with a cleanse. And so we have that Deserticola shampoo. So this shampoo is meant to very gently cleanse the scalp and hair while also nourishing the hair follicle with that Deserticola. It's going to remove buildup of oil, of debris, of hair products, but it's generally composed of gentle surfactants. And so if you'll remember, surfactants are those cleansing molecules. There are surfactants in your Pure Cell cleansing oil, in your Snow enzyme cleanser, but their surfactants in this system are extremely gentle and natural. And so certain instances in which perhaps you do often use dry shampoo, or perhaps you do have very oily hair, you might benefit from going in twice with the Bodolab Deserticola shampoo, and that's totally fine. For me personally, I'm good with just one wash, but I really work it into the hair, get it into a nice rich lather, and then rinse it off. You just need roughly 30 seconds to a minute with this product to get the benefits of that Deserticola. And then of course, next is that water treatment. And so despite the name, it is meant to be used as a daily conditioner. And so the reason it is named water treatment, of course, is because it is water thin. And once it comes in contact with the water in your shower or bath, it begins to slightly thicken and warm as well, which really enhances the therapeutic experience of this product. So with this, of course, we have the camellia, the nettle, the Deserticola, but there are also a variety of other conditioning polymers in here to really reinforce the strength of your hair shaft specifically. With this product as well, of course, it's always beneficial to apply it to the scalp, but personally, I've always been told to keep conditioners to the ends. So I just bolster the application of the product by putting my hand underneath a good chunk of hair and dashing some of the water treatment onto those ends of my hair. And so that really nicely conditions them, but otherwise I keep my scalp for shampoo. But if you are somebody that doesn't really have a rhyme or reason to how you're applying your conditioner, absolutely go ahead and put this on your scalp. I even know certain individuals who leave it on their scalp and use it as a styling treatment. While I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, it is completely safe in regards to its interaction with the scalp. Now, some of you may know the testing that was produced for this system, specifically the shampoo and the water treatment. In Korea, these are tested and proven to reduce hair loss. In the US and in Canada, that's a strictly regulated claim, and that you must have a monographed OTC drug in your product to make that claim, with something like minoxidil, for example. So, of course, Deserti-Cola, it's a microalgae extract unique to us, so it is not registered with the FDA. So, in this instance, instead, we say these products help maintain healthy hair density, which is absolutely the case. And so, if you're wanting to have the efficacy towards maintaining that healthy hair density, utilizing the water treatment and the shampoo every single day is most recommended. And that was what the study was based on, was consistent use, daily use of both products. Now, last but not least, we have that beautiful finisher, the Deserti-Cola Hair Oil Serum. So this hair oil serum is fantastic. It's a 5-in-1 finishing serum that not only gives you that shine, but it actually has heat protection up to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. It reduces frizz, maintains volume, and seals your damaged cuticles. Essentially, for a moment, if you do have those cuticles that are all flayed out, they're not nicely aligned, it'll weigh down those cuticles so that they do align nicely on the hair shaft. Beyond the Deserti-Cola in this system, we actually do also have giant byungpul extract, which really nourishes the hair. And we have 5 botanical oils that really promote that shine while also giving a nice natural fragrance to this hair oil serum. The beauty within this hair oil serum, because I've seen many different serums in my time as a cosmetic chemist, is that you can apply it so often and not have your hair weighed down. So if you're applying it right out of the shower, right before you styled your hair, after you styled your hair, in the middle of the afternoon when your hair needs a pick-me-up, whatever it may be, this this hair oil serum is perfectly lightweight for whatever task is at hand. Furthermore, I know hair is a very personal experience. Some people might have difficulty giving up their hair conditioner or the shampoo. Sometimes I find just giving them the hair oil serum first gives them that taste of not only the RIMAN ingenuity, but specifically the Deserti-Cola prowess. And oftentimes they then are more curious about exploring the shampoo and the water treatment. All right. So that was it. Let's do a recap because I know that was so much information. So again, there are 2 main features of your hair. Your hair follicle is that living part of your hair. It's composed of differentiating cells that form essentially that keratin thread. It has the bulb that anchors the hair, your dermal papilla, which gives oxygen and blood and nutrients to the hair that's essentially growing, and the melanocytes, which are the cell types that create melanin or pigment that is then deposited into the cortex to give you your characteristic hair color. The hair shaft is the dead part of your hair, which extends from the scalp. It is composed of tightly packed keratin. We have the medulla in the middle, which really has no function for many, the cortex, which has not only our pigment, but various hair strengthening bonds, and the cuticle, the outermost part of the hair that is protecting it from various irritant penetration and giving it a layer of hydrophobicity. Your scalp in and of itself is also a crucial component in perceived hair health. Same structure of skin layers, same microbiome, same need for a balanced microbiome, and it can really help ensure that your hair is growing in a way that looks healthy if you treat your scalp as the root of the hair growth system. And so we also addressed 4 main categories of hair concerns you might perceive. And so that was, of course, dryness, dandruff, oiliness, and cuticle damage. Dryness, perhaps your hair follicles aren't producing the necessary amount of sebum. Dandruff, you either have a microbiome imbalance or some other imbalance that is causing the flaking of your scalp skin. Oiliness, your hair is producing too much oil, either due to hormonal regulation, some external factor, or over cleansing. And then cuticle damage due to heat styling, brushing your hair when it's extremely elastic, extremely wet, or even chemical treatments as well. And this can be perceived as breakage, as frizz, as fraying, whatever it may be. And so in our commitment to creating that RIMAN difference, even from head to toe, we have employed the Deserti-Cola extract in all 3 products of our hair care line. And if you'll remember, that extract is a 12 times concentrated form of a metabolite called loliolide that is taken from an algal resource found in the desert. This not only nourishes the scalp, but also beautifies the hair shaft and strands as well. And alongside that Deserti-Cola, we have camellia seed oil, nettle extract, and a variety of other conditioning polymers and gentle surfactants to create these systems. And so when we look at each product in more detail, that shampoo is really there to balance the scalp, to cleanse as necessary, but to also deposit some of that deserticola and the nettle extract. That water treatment then goes in not only to complement the efficacy of the shampoo on the scalp level, but to beautify the hair strands as well, to apply those conditioning polymers to really realign the various strands. And lastly, that hair oil serum comes in for whatever and whenever you need it. Heat protection, shine increase, frizz reduction, volume maintenance, and even cuticle enhancement with really sealing those damaged cuticles. And so that is really the summation of the various different Deserticolor products and what we are looking at in regards to our approach of hair health. And so, of course, here, I don't know why it says skin physiology. Here is attached the QR code for the hair physiology and RIMAN discussion. We are also dropping it in the chat as well. Reminder that this QR code just takes you to all the various worksheets. I believe this one's titled Session 5, and it's one that doesn't have a preview on it, so you just download it. There's another Session 5 that's actually going to be our Session 6, but go for the Session 5 that doesn't have a preview and go ahead and download it. But I hope you learned something new with this discussion, this in-depth discussion of hair physiology. And of course, we're not going to end there in terms of being in depth, because next week we are addressing that last line, lifening, beauty from the inside out. We're going to look at how the consumption of not only beauty supplements, but general supplements are really aiding in your external aesthetics. And it's going to be a fantastic discussion. But after that, we of course have that Q&A session. So again, I would love for y'all to send in your questions. I really want to answer these questions because I know you are such curious and beautifully curious people. So please feel free to send in your questions to ritual@riman.com with the subject line along the lines of Product University questions. And I ask that you send them in by February 14th. We did extend the deadline for that, but again, just wanting to make sure we get the proper support on answering these questions from HQ if necessary. But that was it for today, y'all. I hope this was informational to you. If this created any more questions, feel free to email me at ritual@riman. But again, I'm so grateful for your time tonight. I know it is valuable, and I will see you all next Product University for Session 6. Have a fantastic night.